All right, hello and welcome to Around the Horns. I'm Aaron. I'm here with my co-host Zach, and today we are going to be discussing the unfortunate events at the Dish that took place over the past weekend. We'll also hit on the game Tuesday night against HBU. We're going to take a look at some teams on the bubble. We're going to talk some regional stuff, where the committee might send the Horns, take a look at some projections. And then, of course, we will be previewing the weekend series against West Virginia as Texas travels to Morgantown. But Zach, have you recovered from the Oklahoma State weekend yet?
Yeah, I think so. Slow, painful process, eternal sadness. But my little man is now using the bat pretty freely on the T-ball, except for he likes using the big end to hold it and hitting with the handle. So I don't know. Maybe he's the next, Ivan Melendez out there. Not real sure yet.
That's an easy adjustment. That shouldn't take long to fix. You can get him in the lab. You don't even have to pay for hitting lessons. You just teach him how to hit with the right side of the bat. Yeah, I mean, all right. So it's all looking up. I mean, we've got a future slugger in the wings. The weather, it hasn't been bad. Ivan Melendez, he's fun to watch. Trey Faltini, he's making some cool plays at shortstop. Hey, it's not all bad. We might not have these guys in the burnt orange for too much longer. So regardless of what you think about this Texas season and the pitching staff, I would advise enjoy some of the fun players while we still have them, because, there might not be another Ivan Melendez coming around the corner unless Zach's son Augie figures out which side of the bat to use to hit the ball, I guess. But yeah, Zach, so that's a good positive. But overall, we do need to talk about the Oklahoma State series. Obviously, Texas did get swept. It was a big series. Regional hosting is now looking kind of grim after getting swept by Oklahoma State. What are your just kind of first thoughts about what happened over the weekend? And then we can get into some specifics.
Yeah, when looking at Oklahoma State on the paper and looking at them in person, two completely different things. I think this is the first team where I came away thinking, like, throw out all the paper, throw out all the clippings, throw out all the previews. Like, these guys know how to hit for power. They just don't focus on that. They know how to pitch pretty well. I can see why they've had a bit of a roller coaster season, like getting down 7-0 on a Sunday game. Yep. Like, you just can't do that because you can't expect a Texas bullpen to come along and just blow it for you. On Friday night, again, bullpen. Every single time Texas was able to come back, they just got pegged back. So it's a team that knows how to grind. In many ways, they remind me a lot of Texas.
I mean, I thought they were really good. This was one of the first times I came away from the weekend, and I just, looking at Oklahoma State and just kind of how the team profiles, I think they're the second best in the country from what I've seen. I haven't watched enough Oregon State and enough like Miami and teams like that to really know for sure. But I think after Tennessee, who's obviously the clear favorite on paper, I like this Oklahoma State team. They do have some guys that can hit for power. They do a good job taking walks when given to them. And then they've got two starters that I really like, Justin Campbell and Osmond. Their third starter got hurt, so we'll have to see what they kind of do there. And then the bullpen, they've just got multiple guys that Fan Soccer and McLean. I really liked both of those guys, especially McLean, to close it out there. It seems like a team that is destined to kind of make a deep run. I'm not saying Texas should have gotten swept at home, because obviously they shouldn't have. They were right in the game on Friday and Saturday, which you made a point of. But I think I would be surprised if they're not in Omaha, which obviously anything can happen. The regionals and the super regionals are crazy, but this feels like an Omaha team to me when I'm talking about Oklahoma State.
Yeah, the big worry for me is what happens with Victor Medeiros. I don't think he has a big injury. It looked like an oblique, but obliques can obviously hang around this late in the season. But they don't have a number 3 starter, really.
Yeah, that hurts.
Good news for them, though, is their middle relief is really good. They've got a solid up-down middle relief. And so, that'll hurt them long term once they do get it, if they got to Omaha or if they got really deep into a regional. But yeah, I agree. This is definitely one of the better teams in the nation. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of play outside of the Big 12, because they've had some success there, but they haven't really played a really tough schedule too. So
Yeah, no, it'll definitely be interesting to track down the stretch. But getting back to Texas, man, just the bullpen is starting to wear on the entire team. Early in the season, it's easy for those guys to say, and they have said it to us after the game, oh, those guys will turn it around. We're still a confident group. We got a lot of confidence in those guys. They're going to figure it out. We're going to be just fine. As the season is worn on, it's May now. The post-game interviews are more like, someone's got to step up. The bullpen's been doing it again. We were talking to Silas, and he was just like, I don't know. Like, I can't tell you what's going on. Just got to get better, got to keep working, but I don't exactly know what's going on. It's starting to wear on the team. The offense feels constant pressure. David Pierce trying to figure out who the heck to go to in the bullpen. I mean, some people might not have sympathy for him since the team started number one and they're now unranked, but I'm just thinking, I don't know what I would be doing if I was trying to make those decisions right now. And then the starting pitchers, it takes a toll on them too, because they're extended probably far further than they need to be. They feel like they've got to go 7-8 innings or else they're not going to be able to get the win for the team. So it's really starting to take a toll on this team more so than it has in the past.
Yeah. I think at the beginning of the year, it was always, look, the guys are going to come around. They've got a lot of talent. Everything's good. To look, we've got a confidence issue. To at this point, it's just like, who's going to be the guy? Like, someone's got to throw a strike.
Yeah,
like,
so
I don't care if it's
9 games left.
Like, can we get Lauren Burke on the team for, the rest of the season? Like, they need something at this point. You never want to hear the words team meeting in the middle of a season. Like, they had the infamous team meeting, which actually, helped them. They came back and beat Air Force handily, and then they swept Baylor aside. But then after the Oklahoma State series, Pierce, Vin is like, these guys just got to get away from baseball for 24 hours. That's not something you want to hear this late in the season. That is bad news bears. Like, when these guys are that just befuddled, confidence is a funny thing in baseball anyways. It can wane and wax like between innings. I've seen guys that look amazing in the next inning, like they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but man, this is like an all season confidence thing at this point. So
yeah, no, I mean, I think befuddled is a good way to put it, because, I was on this show, I was just talking about, hey, all of these guys can't be this bad for this, long of a period of time, just due to, the law of averages, positive regression, just volatility with relievers. A couple of them are going to get hot, and, David Pierce is going to have some guys to go to. It just didn't happen. I was wrong. It just has not been the case. And now we're sitting here, there's 9 games left. Conference tournament, Texas is looking like a 2 seed. Who knows where they're going to end up? But yeah, so I mean, they've got guys like Morehouse. He's been really good to start games, but when he comes in with traffic on the base in the middle of the game, he's been a little bit of a different guy. LeBaron Johnson Jr., we all know the stuff. We talked about him a lot. He's not necessarily a guy they trust when, other teams could be doing stuff on the bases, dropping bunts, or, trying to steal. He's not the quickest to the plate. He's not the smoothest fielding his position. There's just a lot of guys that maybe can excel in very specific roles, but they need more malleable relievers that can do things, that can do multiple things and come in many different situations. Does that make sense?
no, agreed. I think I made this comment on the board the other night. I said, at this point, the bullpen is situational pitching only. They don't have long relief. They've got guys like Andre Duplantier. He can come in and he can work a batter or 2 or 3. But you're not going to have consistency over 2 innings or 3 innings. Staley, he's another guy. You might get 1 good batter out of him right this moment. Like, he does not have a feel for his breaking ball at all. LBJ is another guy. Like, you're going to get an inning out of him, but you don't really know if that's going to continue to be repeatable after that inning. So he's really a 3-out or less guy. The 2 guys that they really can lean on at this point are Luke Harrison and Olivares. And Olivares, even then, guys are going to get barrels on his fastball. Like, it doesn't have a lot of spin on it. It doesn't have a lot of movement or tail or run. There's not a lot to it, but he's able to throw it over the plate for a strike. So, do you leave him and try to extend him after an inning? Pierce and them have obviously said, no, we don't want to, because I think they're afraid of getting hit. They might lose that option. They might have to, though. So
yeah, it's really tough, because obviously you've got people saying, just throw strikes. It doesn't matter what happened. Just see where they hit it. Well, if you do that, that's what they did against Air Force. and then Air Force put 5 dents in the batter's eye, dropped 14 runs, and left town with a win. So, and then if you don't throw strikes, you're going to end up with what happened versus Oklahoma State, just loading the bases, walking in runs. Same thing happening against Houston Baptist, even though Texas was obviously able to take care of business. But it's just, you've got to be able to throw competitive strikes at this level. There can't just be, oh, I'm just going to throw strikes right down the middle. And then, yeah, I mean, that is kind of what Olivares does. He's done a good job throwing strikes. He hasn't gotten hit around a ton, but the stuff isn't exactly what they're looking for. It's not really electric. Yeah. Who cares? And he's been great versus lefties, but at this point, Texas might just need to roll him out there against all types of hitters. And he's not really missing many bats against right-handed hitters. There's been some solid contacts off of him. So it's just a tough situation that they're in. And we're getting late in the season to where it might not get turned around in time. And it's just unfortunate. So,
yeah. And, my last thought on the Oklahoma State series was Texas, I think I saw they gave up 21 or 22 free bases on the weekend.
Yep.
That's going to lose you a lot of games. I think Texas only got walked 2 or 3 times. I mean, that's not tenable. So, it's not that Texas is that much worse of a team than Oklahoma State, but they don't have the bullpen. So yeah, there's your gap essentially between the two teams. Cause I think Texas is still a better hitting team than Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State still has a lot of swing and miss in them as bad as the pitching was. But if you don't have a bullpen to eat up innings and your starters aren't going 7, well, you're in a lot of trouble. So,
I mean, it is pretty much all on the bullpen at this point, which just sucks, but baseball is the ultimate team sport. And if you have one group that's really lacking, it's going to cost you. I mean, if you go to the Big 12 page and you go to stats, and they'll have the team stats by category, Texas, number 1 in all the hitting categories, pretty much. They're number 2 in pitching, if you believe that. They're number 1 in defense. And it's like, you go to the standings and they're number 6. So it's like, what is going on here? The team is obviously just can't put it all together. They've got the guys. Obviously the offense has been great. It's very frustrating, but there is a big series coming up this weekend, Zach. They go on the road to West Virginia, where you've pointed out they have never won a series before. They really need that to change if they want to make a push, climb up the Big 12 standings, get it in a better spot for the postseason. But I'll let you give us a preview of what we might see from the West Virginia team over the weekend.
For sure. Before we get there, I just wanted to call out Lucas Gordon, dude.
Yes.
No one is going to talk about it. No one's going to write about it. But I'm going to continue to harp on that performance. 11 strikeouts from a guy, he maxes out 92, maybe 93 if he's really amped up on his fastball. But that dude had them guessing all day long. It's a freaking shame that dude had to take an L on the day. Lucas put in a dude performance. Like, if you see more of that going forward, watch out, because that's going to be something special.
His confidence is really growing. I wrote about it briefly before I had to start writing about the bullpen, and I just tried to get through that by making sad jokes to make myself feel better. But I did write about that. I mean, he's in a really solid spot to be in the weekend rotation next year, which I think Texas fans should be excited about, because the way that he's grown since that UCLA start, he's pitching with a lot of confidence. He's got more swing and miss. He's working to the top of the zone every now and then. The curveball is really coming along. So I agree with you. That's a really good call. I'm glad you gave him the shout out right there.
Yeah. But back to West Virginia. When I first heard the stat that they had never won a series at West Virginia, I was like, how is this possible? Now, granted, they've only been in the Big 12 since 2013, but dude, you got to win a series in West Virginia. I mean, come on.
We're due.
Now, granted, last year was canceled due to COVID, and I think Texas was by far a much, much better team than West Virginia could have ever hoped to be. But, it is what it is. You can't count those. And so West Virginia comes in 26-16. They're 9-6 in conference. Their RPI is 43. Their strength of schedule is 59. They've got an ELO of 52, which, to me, it tells me they're a borderline quadrant 1 team. But if you take away and strip out the conference play against Texas, TCU, Texas Christian, if you strip out Oklahoma State series, their non-conference is really bad. In fact, tonight, or I should say Wednesday night, they're playing a Division II foe as a warm-up for the Texas series. Dude, you're in May. What are you doing playing Division II Charleston of West Virginia? Not even College of Charleston.
They're preparing to face pitchers that can't throw strikes is what they're probably doing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably resetting their eyes like, okay, we're expecting a really bad pin this weekend, guys. Let's go face a D2. Let's go hammer it out.
We are just joking through the pain right now.
But if you look at their Q1 wins, they're 4-5 against Q1 teams. 2 of those came against TCU, and 1 of those came against Oklahoma State. So, they really haven't beat any top level competition. They are 9-6 against Q2 teams. But, like a lot of teams in their RPI, that a lot of their wins have come against, the Q4 teams. Their biggest non-conference win is actually going 2 of 3 against Charlotte, who, by the way, have the worst jerseys in all of college baseball. I mean, those things are just abysmal. The font's either like 10 times too big, or like, you're like, who is this team? Just come on, guys. You're a Division I school. But as mentioned, they went they went 2-1 against TCU. They took 3-0 they went 3-0 against Baylor. They lost 2 of 3 to Oklahoma State. They lost 2 of 3 to Texas Tech. And then this most recent weekend, they went 2-3 against Kansas. So outside of the TCU series, which kind of took everyone for a surprise at the beginning of the conference season, they've basically done what everyone expected them to do: beat the bad teams and lose to the good teams. Now, they haven't been swept, and I don't think anyone's thinking Texas can sweep them on the road with this bullpen, but they're a really athletic team. They're really well coached. Maisie is a kind of a crazy man. He likes to put all kinds of weird pressures. He likes to just do weird things on the base pass. He's always been a fun guy to watch. He's a really good guy. I've never heard a single bad thing about him. So I have a hard time rooting against them, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they look like at home, because on the road, they've been abysmal. They're 500. In 2021, last year, Texas beat West Virginia 2 out of 3 at Disch-Falk Field in the last conference series of the year to win the Big 12. They had to face Jackson Wolf, and that dude is just a monster on Friday, which they lost to, but then they were able to bounce back behind a supreme performance by Stevens. He went 8 innings. I think he gave up 3 runs. Southern came in and closed it out by striking out 2. Hansen went 6 and a 2/3, and then Witt came in and shut him down. So I think Gordon pitched that Sunday game as well. But, Texas has seen most of the pitchers that they're going to be throwing against. So none of these guys are new. Like, these are very familiar teams to each other. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out and compete.
Yeah, no, I mean, we say it all the time, but a big key this weekend is going to be getting the starting pitchers off the mound. When we're looking at the projected starters for West Virginia, you noted here, all 3 of them have ERAs over 7 in conference play. So, we've talked about they've had a really pretty soft non-conference schedule. So then when they've gone up against Big 12 teams, the starters haven't fared very well, but they've got a strong bullpen. They've got a lot of guys with good ERAs, good whips. They've got a very solid closer here in Trey Braithwaite, I believe it's how you say it. He's got a 1.38 ERA, 6 saves. So if this turns into a bullpen battle, not ideal, not great, Bob, but we are going to be hoping that Texas can get the West Virginia starters off the mound, build a lead, and then extend the lead. We're sitting here. We know the 6-run lead is not safe. The 7-run lead is not safe. Even if they're up 5-2, 7-2, extend the lead. The offense cannot take the foot off the gas pedal. It's going to be really important. Be smart on the bases, and then cross your fingers, try to throw strikes, and hope someone comes through in the bullpen. But I think getting those starters off the mound for West Virginia is something that they should be able to do, and something that can give Texas a serious chance to win this series, possibly.
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me about the weekend rotation is going to be the weather. So Friday night, it's supposed to be just dumping buckets of rain. It's very likely they don't even play on Friday, which I keep going back and forth whether it hurts or it benefits Texas, because if you shorten the game and shorten the weekend, West Virginia doesn't have the ability to bring those guys and face Texas twice. So they can't, burn up one reliever and then bring them right back out potentially. But at the same time, Texas, who has a much worse bullpen, then gets really shortened. And at that point, you have to count on your starters to go deep. So it'll be interesting to see how the weather plays a factor this weekend. We kind of saw the same thing in South Carolina series, right? Where, they really, like, it was a 7-inning game. They wanted Stevens to go all the way. They did not want there to be an issue of having to go to the bullpen. So we'll see what that looks like. The two guys that really stand out from their bullpen, as you mentioned, Trey Braithwaite, and then the guy that Texas saw, I think, at least 4 times last year was Noah Short. He's been their short relief, into the game, stopper kind of guy. So, they've got guys that they can hit, but it'll be interesting to see more of what Texas can do against those starters, because Hampton's got decent stuff. He's just not looked very good in conference. And then Waters, their Friday night guy, who was their closer last year, and he started the Big 12 tournament against Texas, but he hasn't looked comfortable in conference. He's gotten pretty well beat up. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be up to the offense. Luckily, the weather and the scheduling shouldn't play a part with the Texas offense. They should be able to mash the ball either way, have a good approach, extend at bats, extend innings, just really work that pitch count as much as they possibly can. And then, we kind of already talked about the West Virginia offense. They like to just play chaos ball, just make stuff happen, put pressure on the defense, put pressure on the pitcher, the catcher. They're not going to bash a bunch of home runs. I know we said the same thing about Oklahoma State, and then they bashed a bunch of home runs. So look, anything is possible with some of the pitchers right now at Texas. West Virginia might hit some home runs, but that is not how they typically score their runs, what we will say. So be prepared with anything. It's going to be really important to try to manage the running game. Like we said, could be tough for LeBaron Johnson Jr. We know they don't love him in those spots, but at this point you might have to use him regardless. So that's just something to look out for against the West Virginia offense.
Yeah, their offense numbers aren't great. Like you said, 265 batting average, 789 OPS. They've hit 39 home runs on the year, but their stolen bases is just ludicrous numbers. Every time I look at them, I'm like, I think someone made a typo. Like, they've added extra digits. Yeah. They're 135 of 169. What? That's insane. Now, granted, they've only stolen 31 bases in conference. Like, a lot of that has happened out of conference, but still, like, it's obvious what Mazey's plan is. They got to get a guy on, and they're moving him over. They're putting pressure. They're putting, the defense in this. They're making stressful situations for the pitchers. If you look at their top hitters, Austin Davis, super electric guy. He's hitting 335 on the year. He's 25 of 29 in stolen bases. Super athlete, right? Then you got Holbrook, who's a little more power hitter. He's 331 with a 943 OPS. Braden Berry is another guy who hits more, singles and doubles, not huge power, but he's got decent hit. He's hitting 308. And then, of course, their 5-tool guys, Victor Scott. He's hitting 290 on the year. But he's 33 of 39 on the stolen bases, which is pretty close to the entirety of Texas's season on stolen bases, in case anyone's counting. But he's a guy that's been kind of in the program and has always looked really good and has always had great defensive tools. I remember him catching a couple of fly balls in the outfield last year against Texas that you're like, how did the guy get there? And he's just super fast, but his hitting's kind of come around. So he's hitting 290 on the year. So he's a guy that they're going to have to watch out for. They like to lead Davis off and then bring in Victor Scott in like the 4 or 5 hole just to kind of mix it up and add some speed later on. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what their hitting looks like this weekend, especially if it's really nasty weather outside. That's perfect for bunting, having guys slip around trying to grab a ground ball. So
yeah, that's a good call. Defense could become an adventure depending on the field conditions there in Morgantown. So yeah, let's move on here. Let's take a look at the Big 12 standings real quick. I mistakenly crowned TCU Big 12 champs last week. Luckily, they don't just give out the trophies based on what I say on Around the Horns. But I didn't think Oklahoma State would come into Austin and get a sweep. So that played a part into it. But now we look at Oklahoma State's at the top. TCU's still right there. TCU still has a bit of a favorable schedule, but Oklahoma State still has Baylor. And Baylor is down bad right now. They do not have much to offer ever since they lost Tyler Thomas. The pitching is really struggling. So I would be surprised if Oklahoma State does not sweep Baylor. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned on the Around the Horns cast that we saw something was off about Taylor Thomas, and sure enough, right after the Baylor series, they announced he's done for the year. Really unfortunate, good guy, and he's just a hard worker that's really put in his time.
Yep.
Yeah, Texas Tech sits in third place. They're 11-7, so they're only 2 games out, and they play Oklahoma State coming up in 2 weekends, I think it is. So that's gonna be a massive series. And that's not a massive series just for the standings, but that's also a massive series for Texas, because as you start looking at end of the year standings and who's going to get matched up in the Big 12 tournament, I think everyone would really like for Texas not to face Texas Tech in the first game. And that's currently where it sits. So both teams have some work to do to hopefully avoid that. But if you look at the conference standings, yeah, Oklahoma's in 4th at 9-6. West Virginia's at 5th at 9-6. Texas is at 9-9. They're in 6th place. Baylor's at 7th at 5-13. K-State at 4-11, and then the Kansas Jayhawks are at 3-12. So, looking at your conference series this weekend, you got Texas at West Virginia, which again is huge for conference standings, because with a win, Texas could potentially position themselves at the end of the season with 4th place finish in Big 12. Now, will it happen? Maybe, maybe not, but the possibility is there with a series win. The other big series this weekend is TCU versus OU. At this point, Texas is out of the Big 12 title race, and so they need to be rooting for TCU to sweep Oklahoma, because that'll be huge for them moving up into the Big 12 rankings.
Sold. You're telling me I need to root against Oklahoma this weekend? I'm in. I'm there. I'm ready.
And then you have the Toilet Bowl, which is K-State and Kansas. Whoever loses this series really has a chance, because only the top 8 make it, remember? So whoever loses this series may not make Arlington. I think K-State's a much better team on paper, but we'll see what happens there. And then Oklahoma State is playing SEMO, which should be an interesting out of conference for them, because SEMO is actually sneaky good. They'll be in the regionals as a 4 seed or a 3 seed. And then Texas Tech and Baylor are both idle. So do you want to kind of run through who has what series remaining, just so we kind of give an idea of, like, now that we've seen the standings, what's going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about it. Oklahoma State, they've got Tech. That'll be a huge one. They've got to go to Baylor. I think Oklahoma State will probably sweep Baylor. TCU's got Oklahoma and Kansas. Feels like 2 series win, but crazier stuff has happened. Tech's got Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. Oklahoma's got TCU, West Virginia, and Tech. So still a bit of a gauntlet there for the Sooners. I think that would be the ideal one for Texas. If Texas could match up with Oklahoma, and they've actually done a decent job against Jake Bennett, and Pete Hansen really pitched well against them. So I'd be pretty happy if Texas got Oklahoma there in the first game in Arlington at Globe Life, like it was the first time around. West Virginia's got Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State. We know what Texas has left. They've got West Virginia and Kansas. And then, Baylor, Kansas State, Kansas. They're going to.
They've got games that they're going to lose. So
yeah, they will also be playing games.
It's funny you mentioned. I actually have Texas as the 4 seed and OU as the 5 seed in the Big 12 tournament, facing off each other. So
I think that'd be ideal.
I think it's ideal, exactly, because then you play OU. Say you win, you're going to turn around and not have to face Justin Campbell, but you get a rematch against Oklahoma State, and at that point,
or TCU,
or TCU. I think Oklahoma State probably pulls it out, but
probably we'll see.
Yeah, then you don't have to face Justin Campbell potentially in the second round of the Big 12 tournament, and maybe give yourself a shot at 2 wins, which can help bolster the regional projections. Which, speaking of which, let's jump in there and see what kind of the projections are showing right now.
Yeah, so D1 Baseball just came out with the most recent ones. I mean, they're not the one that makes the final decisions, but they know what they're talking about over there. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. Oklahoma State is now a national seed after a big sweep against Texas. Texas, they've got an RPI of 23. That lands them with a 2 seed right now, and that has them heading to Baton Rouge to face LSU. We don't know who the other teams obviously would be. They've got it listed, but just looking at LSU specifically, don't love that matchup. I think if I had my choice, I would rather have Texas face a pitching and defense-oriented team and not just get into a slugfest at this point. Because look, I think Texas can score plenty of runs against LSU, but I've changed my mind on this. I cannot picture the Texas bullpen and pitching staff on the road in that environment against that LSU lineup. That is not something I think would end very well. So I think I would much rather see a lower scoring team if Texas does end up going on the road.
Yeah, I'm as much as I love the box, man, that would be a really tough matchup, because I also saw Louisiana Tech in that regional, and Louisiana Tech is no slouch. They got some arms. The thing about LSU is they have little league defense still. Like, they still make a ton of errors. Their pitching has been completely revitalized since the Houston fiasco for them. Jay Johnson's moved all kinds of people over. He's moved starters into closers. He's moved closers into starters and relievers. And, I don't even recognize their lineup anymore. They do have some injury issues that they've had, but man, facing Barry and Cruz and all those guys would be, I think that spells bad news bears for Texas. The interesting thing, I was looking at this was, so right now Gonzaga is a 16 seed, LSU is the 15, and Virginia's 14, and Oregon's 13. And I looked at the remaining schedules, and even D1 calls this out. Like, Texas and TCU could both end up sneaking in to be a regional host still, depending on how the season ends. Because Oregon's going to they've already lost two games to Oregon State, and they have 3 this weekend. They still have to face 3 against Arizona. Virginia still has Clemson and at Louisville, and LSU still has at Bama, Ole Miss, and at Vandy. So all 3 of those clubs are ones that could definitely drop some games and potentially drop out of the host, bring someone else in, like a Texas, if they were to, continue to win. I think it would probably take a series win against West Virginia, a sweep of Kansas, and then probably win at least 1, if not 2, in the Big 12 tournament. But yeah, we'll see what happens. The other regional where I think Texas may end up in, which no one wants to see, is the College Station regional, which I think they're a number 7 seed right now. And so TCU is slotted as the 2 seed there, along with none other than, they moved them out. Okay, I was gonna say at one point they had Texas State in there, which would be just oh my goodness, that would be a fun reason to watch.
Yeah,
but OU is currently a 3 seed in the Fayette-Nam regional. I call it Fayette-Nam. Obviously, it's Arkansas. West Virginia is a borderline 3 seed. They still might get dropped off if they make the tournament. They're going nowhere else other than Virginia Tech. Like, that is the most solid pick you could ever make for the NCAA tournament. And then Tech's actually got the lowest RPI out of the contenders for NCAA tournament seed, and they are scheduled to go to the Miami regional, which I think actually matches up with them really well. So yeah,
I mean, I would not want to see Texas Tech as a 3 seed, just from what we've seen with some of the power arms and then some of the bats they've got. So we glossed over it real quick before we get to the series to watch and before we get out of here. Zach, what do you got for Texas this weekend? What's your prediction?
I've literally gotten them all wrong.
Yep. I've gone
they've never won in Morgantown.
Nope, not once.
The bullpen has been just,
not good.
Close your eyes, just been bad. I'm going to say they go 1-2 this weekend and hope I'm wrong.
Yep, that's where I'm at. I think the offense is not going to get swept. I believe in the Texas offense. I mean, obviously they just got swept at home. So, and this team has struggled on the road all year. I'll say the offense gets a win. It would be great if they could win a couple. We'll have to see what happens with the scheduling. It'll be weird. We don't know if Tristan Stevens is going to pitch game 2 or game 3. He did come in relief against Houston Baptist on Tuesday night. He only threw 5 pitches, so it's not like a big deal, but they could shuffle that around if they want to. So I'm going to say Texas wins 1 out of 3 this weekend. And we'll see what happens. Zach, what are some other series to keep an eye on that we've already talked a lot about teams around the country, but anything else you want to point out?
Yeah, just a couple of them, and mostly just due to hosting implications. Arkansas is number 4 versus number 19, Auburn. All kinds of national seed implications there. Does Auburn get a national seed? Does Arkansas drop out of a national seed? 22, Georgia versus Vanderbilt. That's another team, Georgia, that could that could definitely fall fast and drop out of the rankings. Southern Miss versus Old Dominion. I think Southern Miss missed their shot at a top 8 national seed, but if they were to drop another series against Old Dominion, now you start wondering, are they even a regional host? Because there's not a lot of meat on their schedule. It's a total joke, but the Big Ten title, Maryland versus Rutgers, I think the Big Ten is just absolute garbage this year. But, if you like Big Ten baseball, by all means, that's the, crab cakes and whatever Rutgers does. I don't know, Garden State. And then, out west, Oregon State versus Oregon. Oregon State just beat them on a Tuesday night, which why are they playing on a Tuesday night if they have a 3-game series in conference this weekend? I don't make the schedules, but we really, as a Texas fan, you should be rooting for Oregon State to demolish Oregon and just put a bad beating on them, hoping that the perception knocks Oregon out of the hosting ranks, because that opens up maybe a potential spot. So those that's what to watch.
I like those calls. Big Ten, sorry about it. I don't think our mentions or our comment sections are going to get flooded with a bunch of Big Ten baseball defenders. But if that is the case, we are ready for the smoke. So I'm not worried about that. Maryland versus Rutgers. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Oregon State, Oregon, I can get behind. That'll be really fun. And with that, we'll probably go ahead and get out of here. Please be sure to like the video. You can subscribe to the Orangebloods YouTube channel. Leave some comments. Check us out on orangebloods.com. A lot of recaps, a lot of previews. The game day threads are always an event that is taking place. A lot of fun stuff going on in there. You can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Aaron Little OB. You can find Zach at the Dish on Twitter. Zach, anything else you want to shout out or tell the people about before we get out of here?
Yes, the first annual Fajitas on the Road to Omaha. Come out, support Occupy Left Field Foundation, meet some Texas players, have some margaritas. Mattel Rancho is going to be open up for the first time or only time in the month. So come out and enjoy.
Yes, there you go. See, there's plenty of good things to think about. Why
margaritas, man?
Why
margaritas.
Sit around thinking about the Texas bullpen in the 8th inning in some random game when you could just be focused on fajitas? Everybody loves fajitas, So there you go. You heard it here from Zach. Be there. That'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, and with that, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.